Hello and welcome into the Ringerverse, your Nexus feed for all things fandom. I am Ben Lindbergh, senior editor for The Ringer, Button Mash host, and your captain here at Ringerverse Recommends, welcoming you to another edition of Ringerverse Recommends, this time for September 2025, accompanied as always by my familiar, the loyal, beloved dachshund, Grumpkin. We gather here at the end of every month to shout out some recent releases that we've liked but haven't had a chance to talk about in depth on a full-length episode. They are typically in the nerd culture realm. Not always. Sometimes we make exceptions to that. Today we will, but that's the idea, at least. It's been a busy month. We've had so much to talk about. Gen V, Peacemaker, Alien Earth, a Demon Slayer movie, and so much more. It's been an unbelievable button mash month. So many great games. But there are a few things that have slipped through the cracks, and so we've convened some of our Ringerverse and House of our hosts. We don't have the whole crew with us this time, but Joanna Robinson will be back on Book Corner, making her return to Ringerverse Recommends. So happy to have her here. And a few of the Midnight Boys will be here as well. So at the end of the episode, we will get that collection of clips. I will return to recap those recommendations and also share a listener recommendation sent to ringerverserecommends@gmail.com. And then we'll be out of here. But last month, we switched the format. So we now have a spotlight segment, a conversation where we focus on one recent release. Now, we skipped the July edition of Ringerverse Recommends when I would have recommended Dexter Resurrection. I still do recommend it, and in fact, I did a dialogue with my Ringer colleague Miles Surrey, which ran on the website at theringer.com. What a great website. It's text, but that's okay. You still read things online, right? I hope so. So you can check that out to get my thoughts and Miles's on the latest Dexter spin-off, sequel, and also the state of the Dexterverse. But this time, on this episode, we will be talking about Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. As one of the resident Star Trek fans here at the Ringerverse, I always try to squeeze Star Trek in where I can. And Strange New Worlds has been a highlight of the franchise for me. The third season just wrapped up on Paramount Plus. And so I will be joined in just a moment by Joshua Rivera to talk about it. Joshua is a prolific pop culture coverer. He has written for Kotaku, Polygon, many other sites. He contributes to the Ringer website, and he's joined me a couple times on Button Mash to talk about video games, but he's also a Star Trek guy. And so we will be getting into how we came to Star Trek, how we came to Strange New Worlds, what we thought of the early seasons, what we thought of season 3, which is a very genre-jumping, high-concept sort of series. Doesn't always work, but we'll talk about it, and we'll also get into the future of the show and the franchise and the state of Star Trek. No specific spoilers for Strange New Worlds Season 3, so it's okay to proceed if you haven't seen it. So we'll get right to me and Joshua and our longer conversation. Then we'll be back with some additional recommendations. Right now, let's beam him up. All right, hailing frequencies open. On screen now is the great Joshua Rivera. Joshua, my mind to your mind, my thoughts to your thoughts. Welcome to Ringerverse Recommends.
Hello. So happy to be mind melding with you, Ben.
Yes. It's great because we have a whole series in our future that this is really just a prequel to. We're really just setting the stage for our budding relationship where we play various forms of futuristic chess. I wanted to talk to you about Strange New Worlds because I think our relationships to Star Trek are somewhat similar. A couple of years ago, you wrote about Picard Season 3, as did I, and you described your level of investment in Star Trek as along for the ride and happy to be here. So I've talked a little bit about my history with Star Trek on previous pods. Tell me your Star Trek origin story and what you meant by that exactly.
Yeah, it was basically kind of like a dad and uncle thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I had an uncle who was crazy into it. And then I had my father who was like casually into it, right? Like he was, when there was like a new show, he was pumped to check it out. And then, like most people watch TV back in like the, 90s, life gets in the way and you sort of like check it out when you can,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There are certain things that were appointment television and some things that you just watched when you found it. And Star Trek was something my dad watched when he found it. And so for me, that was kind of like the casual thing, like sports kind of, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
We're just sort of like, if what we're doing is watching the game, that's what I'll do, you know?
Mhm.
I watch them a little more actively now. Um, but that's kind of how it was for Star Trek with me. So,
Yeah. Not too different for me because I love Star Trek, but I'm not stressed about Star Trek, which
yeah.
is a nice feeling in fandom, just to be happy. If it's
Yeah.
good, great. If it's bad, well, it's been bad before, right? Like,
yes.
I've been watching Star Trek since I was a kid. I keep close tabs on it, but I'm not a total Trek completist or scholar exactly. I don't care that much or obsess about Star Trek canon because I feel like Star Trek doesn't care that much about its own canon. And
There's just so much of it.
there's so
right?
that's the thing. It's like it's a volume shooter basically, and a lot of those shots go in, and some of them kind of clank off the rim, but then you take another one, you know.
Mhm.
And although I always want it to be good, it doesn't feel like a complete crisis when it's bad because the series started on TV with 26 episode seasons. There were going to be some duds. There were going to be some filler, right? So you can kind of pick and choose. And yeah, when we were kids, it was always on either first airings or reruns. And so you wouldn't necessarily see everything. You just dip in and out. And when it was good, great. It was kind of background. Now it's more appointment viewing for me, but I still sort of retain that attitude toward it where I just have a deep fondness and affection for it. But it's not the end of the world if something goes wrong, which I guess we'll talk about on this episode. So we're talking specifically about Strange New Worlds. Maybe we can talk a little bit about our general experiences with new Trek and the resurgence in Star Trek properties recently. But how did you get into Strange New Worlds? What was your initial impression of it?
Yeah, I mean, I have followed this new era of Trek on Paramount Plus pretty linearly, right? So,
Me
like,
too.
I've been
Yeah.
watching it basically all as it came out. I fell off a little bit on Discovery towards the end.
Me too.
Yeah. So, yeah, for the listener at home, if you haven't checked out Star Trek of late or ever, this new era on Paramount Plus, which at the time was CBS All Access, I think,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It started off with Star Trek Discovery, which itself was like interesting both to Trek people because it was the first new Trek show since Enterprise in the early 2000s, almost 20 years. And it was also interesting because it was like a production boondoggle, right? Brian Fuller initially was a showrunner, then left that show, and everyone was kind of wondering what kind of show it would turn out to be.
And also because it was serialized, not episodic. So it wasn't just Adventure of the Week. There was actually a through line and a developing story.
Yeah. And so, what do you call it? That show was initially, and we don't have to get into this in detail, but it was initially set before Star Trek, the original series, right? It was like a prequel. And through that, it started to introduce characters of the original series, and that became a spin-off show, Strange New Worlds. And I liked all of those characters more.
Yes, I know. It was really a tough beat for Discovery because I also liked Discovery at first, but then this backdoor pilot for another show inside of Discovery's, which is what it turned out to be, and it was like, oh wait, I wish I were watching this show instead. You know?
Yeah, and it
they
was
just
also,
got upstaged, sort of.
It's so unfortunate. You feel really bad because, like, again, every season Discovery and even like the ones that people would call bad, I would say every season of Discovery starts with a bang. It's like really, really impressive, and then just sort of like loses its way. And part of the appeal of Strange New Worlds, beyond the nostalgic affection you had for like these older characters, was that it was going to go back to being episodic. So that classic Star Trek feeling Ben was describing about like, if it's bad, it's not the end of the world. There's another one next week. We're back to that,
Yeah. No, it felt like a return to that. And especially, you have Picard. So there's kind of an uneven quality in Star Trek output recently, not only across series, but also within series.
Yes.
So Discovery started really well and it was exciting. And then, I fell off, I don't know, season 4 or 5. There was a massive time jump.
Yeah,
it got kind of convoluted. And then Picard, similarly, I thought started in pretty promising fashion And then season 2 was terrible in my like I forced myself to consume season 2 of Picard and ultimately was rewarded when we got to season 3, which we can talk about. But it did really feel like, this is a load off. It's not that I wanted Star Trek to be regressive or retrograde or to say like we have to go back to white guy captains or something and Star Trek can only be one thing. I like that it has experimented and broken the mold and Strange New Worlds is no exception to that. But also it just felt like a real return to just sort of the ethos of the series. Just like this is thought-provoking and it's sometimes sort of silly also, and it can be profound and it can be both of those things. And sometimes it'll just reset and it'll make you ponder things and it'll make you laugh. And it has a crew that you care about with just an incredible cast, which I think is the most important thing when it comes to a Star Trek series.
Yeah. It can't be stressed enough. I think, I think an underappreciated Star Trek thing is that, like, I don't think any of them, except for Enterprise, has a truly bad cast, right? Like they're all very good, and it's sort of like seeing different characters sort of like recede and like enter the spotlight is like one of the fun things about Star Trek. But there's something about Strange New Worlds, like the actors that they cast and how they are riffing on and expanding on these classic parts that people know from the 60s and beyond is just really kind of special, it's sort of like just like you said, it's weird, it's funny, and also just sort of like, I don't know, very warm,
Mm-hmm. That was the thing. I think I wrote this after season 1 that I just felt sort of homesick for Strange New Worlds, because that's what you want. This is the home away from home for the characters, and they become kind of a family, as they often reference on Strange New Worlds. And that's the vibe that you want. It's just like, I'm with my space daddy and I'm with my space family, basically. And Anson Mount is awesome and plays a great Captain Pike and is just magnetic and has a lot of range. And Ethan Peck makes for an incredible Spock. And it's just, it's such a deep cast. It's just a really deep ensemble, and it will kind of zoom out and have episodes that feature a lot of characters. And then it'll kind of isolate individual characters for certain episodes and deep dives and flesh them out. So it is more episodic, but there's a light serialization aspect to it. So it's kind of a blend. Whereas in the original series, you could almost just jumble up those episodes and watch them in any order. Strange New Worlds, there are developments, there are promotions, there are relationships, there are things that evolve. And yet you can kind of dip in and out if you want to, which I wouldn't want to dip out of it because I like watching the show.
Yeah. Also, Anson Mount, who plays Christopher Pike, just has wonderful hair. He's got like an enviable lift and swoop thing going on. It's
the altitude,
really
it's incredible. Like, I want to know everything about his hair products, but Joanna and I call him Handsome. I'm sure we're not the only who do.
No, not at all.
It's become kind of like self-aware too, in that they will refer to the hair and the appearance. But yeah, I mean, it's quite a contrast from previous Star Trek captains who had no hair or maybe had some hair assistance that was, kind of swept under the rug, so to speak.
24th century, they just didn't think about it much.
I guess so. So the first couple seasons, it starts so strong. And one of the other things, they keep it coming, right? So there was a writer's strike and that was a delay and everything, but they have renewed it early. They've kind of shot it quickly so that it's in the can so that they can keep it coming on a fairly regular basis. We're not waiting 3 years between Strange New Worlds episodes, which helps a little bit. And I feel like they found their rhythm fairly quickly when it came to just what is an archetypical Star Trek Strange New Worlds episode and who are some of the standout characters, and the chemistry of the cast just gelled well.
Yeah. What was there anybody that you were like unsure of? Or did they all just immediately be like, yeah, this is it for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are some characters who've been relatively underserved. It's not like I dislike any particular characters, but I just find that some of them don't pop quite the same way.
Mhm.
I guess I'd single out Una, number
yeah.
one, maybe, as
Mhm.
just not having as much material to work with, or just kind of almost being sidelined by the Pike and Spock relationship. And then number one is just there, but doesn't always have something distinctive to do. So that one stands out to me. I think
Yeah.
Laan Noonien Singh is probably third favorite character on the show. Just Christina Chong is just great and had a lot to work with in recently completed season 3. Uhura is great. Ortegas is great. It's pretty deep. What about you?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I think Una is, unfortunately, when the episode isn't necessarily about her role is kind of like, we're working here, you know?
Yeah.
I have to be the boss, unfortunately, because that's what she has to do. She has to take over when the captain's not around. And it makes her seem like a drip, which is, when the show's so fun, it's kind of like a noticeable sore spot,
Yes, it's true. So season 3, which just wrapped up recently, and we should say that the end is already in sight for Strange New Worlds. So this is not a case where we need to speculate about how many seasons will it run, but it was kind of unusual in that they announced the ending far in advance. So there are actually 2 more seasons to come, and the 4th is already done, right? And so there's a full length 4, and then there will be a 5, and that will be it for Strange New Worlds. And we can talk about what the future of the franchise and these characters is beyond that. So it's this happy-go-lucky show developing these characters, adventures of the week. We get to season 3, and it's kind of an awkward time to do a recommendation for this series. not that I'm qualifying my recommendation. I think it's worth watching even at its worst, because its worst is not that bad. But the latest series is the weakest, or the latest season. So we're coming in at kind of a tough time to sing the praises of Strange New Worlds. There are merits to it, but maybe we can talk about the likes and dislikes. Should we start with, are there positives for you from season 3?
I think everybody, one of the cool things about modern Trek is that it's sort of it takes, like we were talking about before, it takes the notion of these people have to make their jobs, their lives, a little more seriously. So it lets them be more full people. And I think season 3 allows them to sort of drop into different registers, in a way that is both fun and kind of impressive, right? It shows how elastic Star Trek has always been and how elastic it can be, without necessarily breaking. And it's the kind of, I don't know, I think you can sort of take a haughty approach to a procedural, right? But and think that's not necessarily your deal. But I think formula is important, and formula allows people to be more depth and find more nuance in things. And I think that's what Strange New Worlds has done. Ironically, though, it has strayed so far from formula this season.
Yes.
And I think that's the problem with a lot of my issues, that there's no baseline.
Yeah.
And fun, what previous seasons and previous Star Treks would have treated as fun diversions have become kind of what this season does all the time.
Yes. Yeah, it's the rare case where you almost want it to be more formulaic, just rein it in a little bit more, because that is one of the strengths of the first couple seasons, was that it would have these diversions, which were entertaining, and the show could kind of flex and show its range and do a musical episode and just experiment and take chances. And that was great. But now that has become the majority of the episodes, almost without exception. There's some sort of gimmick, or the show's doing a bit, basically, at all times. And some of those bits work better than others. But this season, there are a couple of standout episodes, I think. But you can almost classify every episode this season as some sort of very special episode, right? There's sort of There's the documentary format episode. There's the episode that has Klingon zombies. There's the episode where everyone turns into a Vulcan. Like there's always something.
We should have come with Vulcan ears for
yes.
this. Yeah.
There's always something wacky or zany going on, essentially. And you just kind of want to like settle down, do what you do. Like tell me some character-centric stories. Give me some kind of classic Trek. We go to a new planet, we encounter some species, we navigate some moral qualm and question, and we learn something from it, and we come together and we navigate the problem and we solve it and we hit it and head out to the next planet in the next episode. There's not a lot of that going on in season 3.
Yeah, and like the character-centric stuff is also ironically extremely serialized, right? Like Ortega's has like, I would say, a pretty compelling arc this season, but it's stretched across so much of it that like it sort of ebbs and flows with the quality of each episode, where, traditionally you would just have an episode where like Ortega's has to solve this problem, herself, and it's all part of like this one self-contained story about that character in particular. And like, I don't want to harp too much on this because it sounds like they got romance in my Star Trek. But they really struggled with finding, particularly for, the women in the cast, to give them stories that weren't, involved, that weren't about romantic entanglements or complications. And I don't know. I feel like it does a disservice to how like interesting these characters are and how much they've got going on or could have going on.
Yes, yeah, and I think another one I would single out. I meant to mention when you said who doesn't quite work as well is Pike's love interest, Marie Battelle, and I feel bad describing her as Pike's love interest, but that is sort of what that character has been on this series all along. And she plays a more prominent role this season. And a lot of it, there's an infection and there are medical procedures. And we won't spoil what happens in the finale where there's just sort of a metamorphosis and all those things kind of come to fruition if you can follow exactly what happens in almost like a Doctor Who-esque way. But for the first 2 seasons, when we see her, it's usually like a quick scene in Pike's cabin where, they had some shore leave or they had some time together and now they've got to split up again because they're both captains and they're trying to do this long distance thing. And it's basically just Pike is sad because his girlfriend is leaving. And we don't really get a sense of her or their relationship either. We know that he likes her. We know that she's important to him. But it's hard to assess why that is exactly, or, just like, it's hard because she kind of comes to center stage this season, gets more screen time, but it's still very much just how will her being in jeopardy affect Pike more so than her own kind of realized character.
Yeah, and she's more interesting in prior seasons when she just shows up, right? Because like she's a busy captain, and what do you call it? The not that Wikipedia is like an authority, but if you
go
look
to Memory Alpha, Joshua.
Yeah, I know. But it's really funny if you go to Wikipedia and you look up Marie Battelle, all it says, I did this just before recording it, all it says, Marie Battelle is a starship captain and Captain Pike's girlfriend. And I was like, jeez.
Yeah. Yeah, what else do we know about her? Every now and then we get to see her sort of do her thing or strut her stuff or like exist independent of the fact that she's Pike's girlfriend, but not very often. So that is a bit of a bummer.
One thing I did want to ask you about outside of this was, or just talk to you about in general, is that this episode, not this episode, this season, seemed less interested in there were a few, and I would say those are the best ones, but like seemed less interested in interesting sort of like problems or ideas in a way that makes it feel not very Star Trek. Unfortunately, like I don't have a problem with like the J.J. Abrams mode. That's more like blockbuster, but we pause to think a little bit about what we're doing, but not too much.
Yeah. Yes. I have some problems with Star Trek Into Darkness, but I won't get into them here.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm fine with Star Trek dipping into that mode. I'm not. I'm less fine with that being kind of like the only mode. Or there's also some stuff like, without spoiling anything, part of the ongoing concern of this season is like, an alien race that might be a primordial evil, right? And that kind of seems to fly in the face of like what I understand Star Trek to be about, which is sort of like, life of all sorts is never that simple, I feel like Star Trek is something that is a story that rejects the idea of like innate evil in a race or a species or a being.
Yeah.
And this is kind of sort of like didn't care about that,
Yeah. What is the essence of Star Trek, and is this real Star Trek? That can be kind of a fraught conversation on any number of levels, and in kind of toxic ways, but also legitimate ways. And yeah, my wife, when we watched Discovery together, she kind of bumped off it for similar reasons, just because it would get dark and just very like, torture and gritty. And not that there wasn't some of that in previous Star Trek series, but ultimately it is kind of a utopian vision of the future. And, there's always the wrestling with Starfleet is this, benign and benevolent organization, but also has weapons and wages wars. And there's one episode this season that kind of unsuccessfully, I think, tries to dig into that issue. But yeah, it's not always, we come back to it and, everyone's just trying to do their best and we're all working together and science will save us. And, there are some times when it does get a little dark. And again, I don't want to be too restrictive on what Star Trek can be. And I think Stranger Worlds is a lot less like this than Picard was at times, than Discovery. And also just a little less action-centric. There are some times in Strange New Worlds where, they've introduced or reintroduced the Gorn as an enemy. And this is, kind of a callback to the original series and the cheesy effects and the guy in a lizard costume, fighting Kirk. And they've kind of rebranded the Gorn now as, a more just deadly and lethal and intimidating group. But also, with the exception of one episode, I guess, this season, we don't get a great insight into them and what they want and who they are. So they are still just sort of lizard people, but like the lizards look better, it's not like the cheesy reptile Godzilla looking thing, but there's not that much depth to the Gorn for the most part also. So maybe that kind of goes along with what you're saying there, that sometimes it does get a little like setting phasers to kill and doing dogfighting, and that feels out of place in a sense in Star Trek.
Yeah. And again, like we're down in it, but like you said, it's so watchable, right?
Oh yeah.
Like I don't, it just goes down so smooth that like maybe there are some episodes where like I check my fantasy team a little more,
Yeah.
But I'm never mad that, that like I watched it,
Yeah. After the fact, I'll think, where is this going? What is the vision here exactly? But on a moment-to-moment basis, I'm still having fun hanging out with my space friends. And, I didn't even mention all of the kind of gimmicky episodes. There's a Q episode. There's a holodeck episode, which have always been kind of hit or miss. And, this is not new for Star Trek, but I think why it stands out more is that these seasons are 10 episodes.
Yeah.
So if this is old school network TV and the show is on half the year and it's a 26 episode season and you have a handful that are weird, then good. That's a nice palate cleanser. It's a nice change of pace. But when you have a 10 episode season and most of your episodes are kind of the curveballs, the change ups, then it's just like, give me a few fastballs down the middle, basically. And that's what I miss. And, they have already done a little bit of damage control about this, which is, they've really hyped up this aspect of the show, historically speaking. And there was a Variety story back in March where they were asked, Akiva Goldsman, showrunner, producer, he's asked, like, is there anything Strange New Worlds can't do? Is there a genre that the show can't handle? And he basically said, I'm not sure there is. Could it do Muppets? Sure. Could it do black and white, silent, slapstick? Maybe. And in fact, they teased that there is a Muppets Puppets episode coming in season 4, but they have kind of walked that back in the wake of the kind of colder reception to the season and said, well, we were rushed, the writer's strike, there were production snafus and such, and season 4 is going to be much better. Don't worry. Like, it's already, we've reined things in and we've found our way back to just true north here. So we'll see. Because they work ahead, I'm not sure how much they were able to adjust based on the feedback to season 3, but they are at least sending the signal that, all right, we're going to get back to what we do best.
Yeah, and it's I would say I guess highly unusual for Star Trek to have a set ending. Although they might have, like, privately, right, been lobbying for this sort of this length in time, because in the fiction, Pike runs the Enterprise for 5 years, right? And then Kirk takes over, and they've been setting that up, in the background, right?
Yeah.
Paul Wesley of the Vampire Diaries, has been showing up pretty regularly as Captain Kirk. Do you like him? How do you feel about him?
I like him, but that's another thing that I sometimes wrestle with the show, where when it becomes about doing that prequel thing of setting up what we know is coming in the canon and bringing these characters together, I kind of care less about that, really, because I'm in the show for this show, not because it is the prelude to the original series. It works well sometimes. For example, Scotty was added to the cast and is a pretty prominent figure this season, and I think is great. And it's nice to have him there. Kirk, though, kind of comes and goes in a weird way, where he's not part of the crew yet, and they keep coming up with ways to sort of shoehorn him in. He's still sort of the executive officer on another ship. So suddenly Kirk's here and Kirk's back and he's renewing these relationships and everything. And you can see them laying the groundwork and kind of bringing these characters together. And that's fine. But to the extent that it distracts from Strange New Worlds cast, like, for me, Strange New Worlds is Star Trek at this point. So it's not really set up for something else that I'm anticipating more. But I think the portrayal of Kirk is good. Like, I enjoy Kirk's presence for the most part.
They also do, in one of the many gimmick episodes, they do a fun parody of 60s Star Trek, in which Paul Wesley does an exaggerated Shatner impression. They got me, I won't lie. But yeah, I agree. I think that's another, like, growing frustration, where it's just sort of like, I want the promise of the show. I want Strange New Worlds, And
I'm not sitting here going, like, when will McCoy come in? Because he probably will at some point, but Dr. Mbenga is awesome. He's one of my favorite characters on the show. So, and Nurse Chapel, like, Nurse Chapel's an original character, of course, who's much more prominent here, but I'm not sitting there thinking, give me Bones, like, get the core trio together again, because I like this cast and this crew.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's sort of like a thing that I feel like we'll never get, like, the ideal version of the show again, because there are too many just, like, moving parts, right? Sort of, they're very cagey about whether they just want to, like, run the original series again and slide into, like, Kirk and the classic crew, which, again, I think that would be a mistake. I also will watch it if that's what they do.
Yes.
But it's like one of those things where it's just sort of like, Discovery had its shortcomings, but I don't think we should, shy away from trying again and doing something else, like, new and different in a different era. But yeah, how do you do you think that they're trying to, increasingly play chicken with remaking the original series.
Yeah, and maybe Next Generation as well. So we can close with just a brief sort of state of Star Trek. What's next for the franchise? What do we want next for the franchise conversation here? And the finale of season 3 of Strange New Worlds kind of clears the decks on a narrative level, and we're, heading off into the unknown and going boldly. And so it sort of seems like it has the potential to be a reset. We'll see. But elsewhere in Star Trek, so Discovery's concluded, you had Prodigy, you had Lower Decks, which was wonderful. I love Lower Decks. Lower Decks is number 2 for me, like a close 2 behind Strange New Worlds when it comes to best of New Trek, and the fact that they crossed over was a delight as well. And then you had Picard, which was all over the place, really. And I think we were aligned where I almost quit on Picard in season 2. And then season 3, they just said, okay, we know what you want.
Yeah.
Like, good for them. They tried to take this legacy character and not make it just a TNG reunion. And then ultimately it just it was built to be a TNG reunion, and other things weren't working well. And so they leaned into that and they brought back more characters, and it worked. And that turnaround from season 2 to season 3 was striking.
Absolutely.
And that just scratched the itch for me. And in a way that was dismaying, because it was like, this is fun, but is this bad for the franchise? Will this just encourage that same impulse that we see everywhere in IP and in shared universes now, where it's just, let's keep running the same plays, let's do callbacks and Easter eggs and nostalgia and bring back the same characters over and over and over again. It was nice that Star Trek felt free from that for a little while. And so there's been a lot of talk of Star Trek legacy. Just, okay, let's do TNG again, and let's just make it a series. It hasn't come to fruition, but a lot of buzz about that. There has also been some discussion of a Star Trek Year 1, a spin-off of Strange New Worlds that would just be Kirk and Spock again, basically. And of course, there is Starfleet Academy, which is the one really confirmed show that's on the horizon, a new thing, which takes place in the far future Discovery timeline, but is basically just like, young cadets just kind of becoming officers in Starfleet, the first generation of the rebuilt Starfleet in this far future scenario. And, like, there's some crossover with this Discovery cast. There's also like Paul Giamatti,
Right.
So like, I don't know what to expect from this series. It's coming early next year. So that's the one thing that we know. And hopefully that will be new and exciting in some ways. But again, it's just like, it really runs the gamut. Like Section 31, which was at one point...
I didn't watch that one.
Don't. That was wise. That was one of the worst pieces of popular media I have ever consumed. And you could completely tell that this was supposed to be a show, and then it just got reconfigured into this streaming movie, and it was a disgrace, basically. I wanted to recommend it on Ringiverse Recommends, and then I watched it, and I thought, I cannot in good conscience. I can recommend that you not watch it, which is what I'm doing now. But, that was just a misfire, and it sounds like they're not going down that road with streaming movies anymore, or with Section 31. So I don't know. Do we just end up kind of pivoting back to what has worked before? Or does Starfleet Academy do something new? Can we have both? Because that's what I want, really. I want multiple threads of Star Trek. I'm fine with having the traditionalist Trek show, as long as that's not all we have.
Yeah. And I think from, just from what we can infer, right, from Strange New Worlds and like what they've said and what they've greenlit and what they haven't greenlit, I feel the people in charge of Star Trek, which I guess is mostly like Akiva Goldsman and his brain trust, are kind of interested in doing that, right? Like having something new, trying something new, and then also having like a nostalgic like safeguard, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with, Starfleet Academy. And then, when that first season's wrapped, right before Strange New World, season 5 drops, we've got a year 1, or something of that nature. I also think, because another wrinkle here is that the Star Trek movies have been in development hell
Oh yeah.
Basically for a decade now, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we're approaching 10 years since Beyond, which was the last Star Trek movie. Um, and there have been all sorts of weird developments. I think with like what Skydance's acquisition of Paramount, they're trying to
Yeah.
sort out something new
Mm-hmm.
there.
Yep. Yeah, that's really kind of a complicating factor here because who knows what's going to get green light, what's going to get greenlit. The executives have said that Star Trek is a priority, and obviously it's something that they've built up Paramount Plus with. Maybe there is some theoretical limit to how many Taylor Sheridan shows there can be at one time. Not any limit to how many I will watch, to be clear, but Star Trek is one of those tentpoles. And yeah, even though it's a little bit different from the Star Wars situation where it's so strange not to have a movie for so long because Star Wars started in theaters. Star Trek obviously started on the small screen, but it is odd to go this long. And so there are things in the works here, which has been the case for years and years. It's incredible to look at the people who have been working on a Star Trek movie at some point and turned in a script, and, Tarantino and Noah Hawley and Matt Shakman. And it's just like a succession of big name people over and over who seem to have some vision or passion for Star Trek and then just went elsewhere. And, Chris Pine even called the franchise cursed at one point, right? At least the movie franchise. And Alex Kurtzman, I guess, is kind of like the steward, the shepherd of Star Trek, kind of the Feige Filoni of Star Trek, and has overseen this big burst of Star Trek. Maybe it's also a case of like, we went from no shows for years and years to so many shows all at once. Maybe there's a happy medium. But Kurtzman worked on the movies, the Abrams movies as well. And so supposedly there are 2 movies in the works now. There's kind of a 4th movie with the Abrams cast that will wrap up that timeline. And then there's also an original thing with Andor director Toby Haynes attached and people writing, and Abrams is producing, I guess, both of them. But I don't know which way that will go, and I don't know if it will go anyway. I assume at some point with this merger done, they will want to fast track that, and we will actually see a Star Trek movie again, which is sort of something to look forward to because it's been an extended drought.
Yeah. And I don't know. I was, again, like we started this talking about how I am mostly like a Star Trek casual, right? But I do think there's something like beautiful to Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
I love the notion where like Star Trek at its best is like, this crew that very well confronting a group of people who believe something thoroughly, right? And they have to decide amongst themselves, do we agree? Is this right? Or is there a better way to be? And that's like such a good question to just ask over and over and over again in all sorts of formats, and I don't know. I get. I turn. As annoying as as annoyed as I am by Star Trek a lot of times, and as annoying as I can find it, I am a little bit of a sentimentalist towards it.
Me too. Yeah. We have fewer state of Star Trek conversations than we do state of Star Wars or state of the MCU. And that has to do with just the prominence of these properties and how popular they are and how many fans they are. But it feels, at least to me, we're not relitigating that over and over and over on this podcast, at least. And, I have hope. And again, maybe my standards are a little lower because it's just like, yeah, it can be uneven, but what is not uneven when you put out this much stuff? And you can say that about Star Wars and you can say that about the MCU, and you can bemoan and lament the bad things, or you could focus on the positives, perhaps. And, we just swing from pole to pole, basically, where it's like, if the latest thing that came out is bad, it's a crisis. It's the end. It's superhero fatigue. It's Star Wars fatigue. There's no rudder to this franchise. It's crisis. It's chaos. And then something great comes out. And we're like, are we so back now? Like, and I feel like we could maybe just have longer memories, perhaps, or just take a longer view and be like, there's a lot of bad, but also there's some good that comes with that. And next year's the 60th anniversary of Star Trek.
Right.
It's been around for a really long time. It's been kind kind of a constant, even when it does disappear for a while. And I'm glad that it's with us, and I hope it will continue to be with us. And I'll look forward to the highs. And when there are lows, then you can choose not to watch Section 31. And, you can exercise some restraint and protection of yourself.
Yeah, it's baseball, not football, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's the background noise. It's kind of the comfort food in a way. And that's when I think of Strange New Worlds. Like, my happy place is just Pike's cabin when the crew's all there and they're cooking dinner and he has his apron on, and that's when I think of Next Generation too. It's like everyone's playing cards and just hanging out, right? Like, you want just those relationships among the cast. That's ultimately what I gravitate toward. And that's, I think, why, even though we're pointing out some of the flaws of Strange New Worlds, that's why it does have such a hold on us, and why I do give it a very enthusiastic recommendation on the whole, because it nails that aspect of Star Trek.
Absolutely.
All right. We will hope for the best with the continuing 5-year mission, or however many years we continue this. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Joshua. Thank you very much.
Hey, likewise, Ben. Just energize, I guess.
Yeah, we've got some clips queued up, so hit it.
What's up, Ringerverse Recommends? It's me, Joanna Robinson, back on the book recommendation beat here at the end of 2025. I want to recommend a book. Usually I like to show the book to the video when I'm talking. This is an old book. This is R.F. Kuang's Babel. I'm not here to talk about Babel or Babel if you prefer. I'm here to talk about her newest book that came out in September called Catabasis or Catabasis. She says it's okay to pronounce it either way. So I say it's okay to pronounce it either way. I don't have a copy of the book in front of me. I lent it to a friend, but it is extraordinary. It's about two academics named Peter and Alice, PhD students who travel to the underworld to find their advisor because they need letters of recommendation or other motives that might be cooking in the background for all of that. So they travel to the underworld. And basically what R.F. Kuang has done is taken mythologies of like all the underworlds through all the different cultures and mishmash them all together. So it's a journey through the underworld, which is what the word catabasis means. And it's just a really fun sort of mythological quest kind of story. There are great magic systems inside of it, great academic ideas inside of it. And there's also like a really personal section in the middle that is very clearly inspired by, maybe something that the author, similar to something the author herself experienced, which I thought was just like outstanding work. So if you like fun like journeys through mythology where you're pulling from like Eastern and Western cultures to find where all of our ideas about a certain concept meet up in the middle. And if you like quests, and if you like enemies to lovers, and if you like all sorts of different things, that is all available to you inside of Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. It's a little bit of a doorstopper like Babel, but I think you'll really enjoy it. I really loved it, and I couldn't put it down. I thought it was really, really fun, and it's a really good audiobook listen to. I read it and I listened to it. So that is my September Ringerverse Recommends. Okay, bye.
What's up, everybody? It's Van. It's September, and my Ringerverse Recommends for the month is a mini miracle. I'm going to recommend Demon Slayer: Infinity Castle. You guys, okay? I know this is quite the mea culpa for me, but the reality is I saw it. Not just that, but I watched all the stuff from the train and the entertainment district and stuff like that. It's kind of cooking. Now, I shouldn't have to recommend this to too many people because it's making $1 billion right now, but I thought the story wasn't perfect, but it was still enthralling. I thought the animation was brilliant. And overall, the scale of this movie is an achievement to behold. I'm recommending anime. What is going on in the world? Demon Slayer: Infinity Castle. Go check it out.
What's up, Ringerverse? Steve Ahlman here for your recommends for September. It's already September. Oh my God. Fall. Guess what? You know what my favorite thing to do ever is? It's not gambling, but it's fake gambling. Fake gambling, it's probably one of my favorite things because it captures all the thrills of gambling, but your wife doesn't leave you and you get to keep the kids and the house, and it's all great. And that's the video game that I'm talking about today, and it's called Clover Pit. If you're familiar with Balatro, if you're familiar with any of these other gambling and like card-based roguelikes, this is that, but with a slot machine. And not just with a slot machine, but it's also this hilariously bleak and terrifying hellscape that you find yourself in, a 5x5 isolation cell, trapped where you can't get out, and all you have left to do is gamble for the rest of your life. And you get little trinkets and tokens that will help you increase your luck and increase the types of things that you can get after gambling successfully. And the reason that I love this game so much is that it's the absolute perfect encapsulation of slamming your head against a wall and then making the pixels dance and make you feel happy. It's that incredible visceral reaction that only things like Balatro and Clover Pit can do. It's less than $10 right now, came out this month, and it's so good that it toppled my actual recommendation, which would have been a book. So check this out. Clover Pit, it's on Steam right now and probably coming soon to a lot of other things. Check it out.
What is up, Ringerverse homies? How y'all doing? It's your boy, Jomi. Guys, here to tell you about the greatest thing to come out of Great Britain since chicken tikka masala, and it is slow horses. I am in love with this show. Oh my God. I binged the first season in a night. One night. 6 episodes. And I almost didn't want to finish season 4 because I didn't want to lose this show. But it's back for season 5. All our favorite characters are here with us again. Jackson Lamb, the worst human being I've ever seen, but I still have a soft spot in my heart for him. Our guy, River Cartwright, the worst spy ever. Like, legitimately one of the worst. Like, 007, like, if he and 007 did, like, a death battle thing, 007 would just look at River and he would die. That's how wacky he is. But, I still love him. The love of my life, Louisa, is back. Oh, I'm so excited. I love slow horses. They've already got one episode down. Got the second one coming out this week. And I basically build my Wednesdays around slow horses. # Slow Horse Wednesdays. Because that's where I'd be, in front of my TV, locked in on some British television. Join me on the slow horses train. Come to Slough House and let's get it done.
All right, it's Ben back again. Grum has gone to bed, and it's time to put this podcast to bed. I'm here to recap our recommendations, share a listener recommendation, and tell you what's coming up next on our feeds. Thanks again to Joshua. He and I sang the praises of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 3, but really all 3 seasons on Paramount+. Joanna Robinson rejoined us, never left our hearts, but is back on Book Corner with a recommendation for R.F. Kuang's Catabasis. Van Lathan recommended Demon Slayer, the movie, Infinity Castle, still in theaters. Did Van discuss that movie at some length on a Midnight Boys episode that will drop soon after this episode does? Yes, he did. But his heart was overflowing with love for the film, and so he had to let some of that love out here too. The Vanime era is upon us. Steve Ahlman recommended the roguelike Clover Pit on Steam, and Jomi Adeniran recommended Slow Horses on Apple TV+, which recently returned for yet another season, like clockwork, comes out every year. Is Slow Horses nerd culture? No, not exactly. But we did let Jomi get away once with recommending Emily in Paris on this program. So that sort of broke the seal. Can't draw the line at Slow Horses, which is a fantastic series. And if we're recommending non-nerd culture shows on Apple TV+, check out Platonic. That's my smuggle of the month. Great show. No one seems to watch. About to finish its 2nd season. It's the Seth Rogen starring show on Apple TV+ that didn't just win every Emmy. But let's do a listener recommendation, which came to us, as always, via email at ringerverserecommends@gmail.com, where we welcome nominations, submissions for next month and future months. This one comes from listener Tommaso at Zeni, who comes to us from Italy. listens abroad and says, for the September edition of Ringerverse Recommends, I would like to propose John Scalzi's novel, The Shattering Peace. 10 years after the last novel of the series, The End of All Things, hit the shelves, Scalzi brings us back to the Old Man's War universe, this time with fewer old men and less war, but with the usual mix of irony and action. The first 6 installments of the series focused on John Perry, a 75-year-old who joins the Earth's Colonial Defense Forces, an elite force of elderly people recruited in retirement homes who are given new superhuman bodies. One of the best sci-fi premises ever, if you ask me. That's if you ask Tommaso, that is, to defend our colonies in the galaxy from alien species who may not be so happy with our drive to claim every possible planet. Understandable. Now, spoiler for the first 6 books. A peace treaty between Earth and the Alien Council has finally been reached, and our protagonist, Gretchen Trujillo, a friend of John Perry's daughter from the past books who works as a low-level diplomat, is called to participate in the investigations when the first attempt at a joint colony with settlers from Earth and the alien species mysteriously disappears without a trace. Sounds like the space Roanoke colony. The book is fun and wholesome, as you'd expect from Scalzi. You can probably read it even if you haven't read the rest of the series. But if you haven't, what are you waiting for? The action is great, the humor irresistible, and the world building fantastic. Well, that was a fantastic recommendation as well, Tommaso. Thanks so much. And again, the address is ringerverserecommends@gmail.com. Keep those recs coming. Now, we have plenty more content coming on the Ringverse and House of R. Of course, we have Peacemaker finale coverage coming up quite soon, and we have much more Button Mash to come, too. The avalanche of releases has not slowed yet. We've got Ghost of Yote to talk about soon, and so much more. So please do stay tuned to both of our feeds and to this one as well. Thanks, as always, to Steve Ahlman for producing this podcast. Thanks to Arjuna Ramgopal for his senior podcast management. And thanks to you for listening. We will talk to you soon. And in the meantime, before we return for October, we hope that you will recommend the Ringerverse.